Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
That's it. Have a good week. We'll be back some other time with more talkativeness.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Becca.
What have you been doing?
I am on the summer crusade to finish projects that I wanted finished before we move into our new house.
I saw your project when I dashed into your house a minute ago.
The quilt? Yeah, the quilt on the table. Do you remember that quilt?
I do remember that
quilt from my forever ago times. I was in high school when I blasted out a quilt. Incidentally, Becca's 4 years older than I am. And so Becca was really into sewing and things when I was not. And at the time, so I remember you always wanted me to go with you to Joann's. And I had no eyes to see at Joann's. I would just stand around in the polar fleece and moan about it. Make fun of the polar fleece situation.
If you're in the polar fleece, there's nothing to do but moan about it. There's no
optimism amongst the polar fleeces
that you can find there.
And I just remember, and then at the time, guys, I love how old this makes us sound. This is the aging of our generation of people. Before the internet.
Gosh, yeah.
Isn't that funny? You couldn't actually just locate cute project ideas.
Not really.
No, they weren't free for the taking.
I don't know where we found them.
Well, I remember a big part of my disposal that's why Martha Stewart was such a raging success.
Right,
but
it's true.
I remember for the a big part of my disposal for all things crafty was that there wasn't a lot of. I didn't have the imagination to see
there was
what
nothing
you could do, maybe.
Cute when you went in. Well, because still...
No, you go into Joann's and it would be like a workbook for plastic canvas clowns.
Gross. So true.
Or the toppers, or weird ball gown toppers to ugly dish towels.
Yeah, or...
just stuff that nobody needs.
Strange beanbaggy sculpted things to hold your door open.
There was, well, no, that was a specific with Spanish moss glued to their head for hair.
The thing is, you still go into Joann's, and it is so uninspiring.
Somewhere in my phone, I took pictures at the Goodwill of something. Okay, it was in a bag. It was so funny, and it was one of those. It was like a crafted grandma, like sewn.
Toll painted?
No, it was like fabric. It was fabric. It was a grandma with glasses, like on a little nose, wire glasses in here. That was a vacuum cozy. Just slip your grandma cozy onto your vacuum to make things look really ship-shape in your house. And when you want to vacuum, just toss grandma aside. And it was real bad and devious looking anyways. Well,
I'm having such a hard time picturing it. Is it like, where's her head go?
On the top of the vacuum. So the vacuum is cloaked in her body. And then there's like a grandma head with spectacles on top of it. But it was folded up. And all I have to say is that's what happens when there's no good outlet for creativity and
there's always a better outlet than that.
But because there's like a burning urge. Well, no, I have to be clear that I think this one was actually manufactured somewhere.
I can't.
Becca's losing it. She's totally losing it. We found her weak spot. We found it, guys.
It's really bad.
So, yeah, it was...
I'm sorry.
I had a bit of a mind blown...
Something that tall. It sounds like the creepiest,
It was horrible.
most sketchy
And
thing.
I took a picture of it all folded up in a bag, and then I let that get lost in my photos, so I should check if I still have it.
Wow.
Anyways, it was horrible. But my point is, at the time I'd go in Joann's and I'd just see the
I'm
garbage.
picturing opening up your closet and being confronted by that.
A little short grandma and a grandma cozy.
Well, it would stress me out unbearably.
I don't know. Maybe the point was that you could just leave your grandma in your living room. You didn't have to put it away.
I just pictured that face peeking out of the coats. Or whatever.
Yeah, so anyways,
Oh, heavens.
I'd go to Joann's with Becca, and Becca was all full of thoughts of how to make welted pockets.
Yeah.
That would look like the Angry Bird eyebrows.
A scarlet grow-grain background.
They totally
inside.
would look like Angry Bird eyebrows.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
the failing of her pocket placement was that it would not always come out as what you meant it to be.
No, it was bad. We've talked about those
Yeah,
before.
a long time ago. But the point in this is that at some point, something
this was
happened.
when I was deep in I sewed myself a tuxedo-inspired double-breasted vest.
You should make one of those for your vacuum.
Black satin lapels.
Well, whatever phase
Woo.
it was.
Wow.
And then you were part of some kind of a quilting group that I was not privy
that's when
to.
I was in like 9th grade.
Right,
You know,
so I was
it
young.
Yeah, you were
when you were
5th
doing
grader.
that. But you
Yeah.
would do quilts from time to time. You would get involved in a quilt.
I think I've made 2, but yes.
But we had a friend that you were making a quilt with. And like we had been around.
I've made 3.
I was a younger edition of the
Yeah.
person watching the quilting. And at some point, I was like, you know what I could do? I could make a quilt.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. How many trips to Joann's did you have to take me on before
Eventually
I suddenly
it stuck,
spotted
you
the
guys.
idea of I could sew something? And I bought pretty badly dated cream and white fabric. Now, when I say they're dated, it's because the cream has white printing on it that is like
I
little
remember that.
grapes
Yeah.
with curly Q vines.
Yeah.
And the white is like striped. It's like white and creamy striped.
It's still a pretty quilt.
No, the thing that's funny is that the fabric itself is very dated, but it isn't. It's actually very pretty put together. But the funny thing is that so this is high school, and I don't know what I did. I think I just decided to do a pinwheel. It wasn't like I was following a pattern.
Yeah.
I just cut a bunch of squares and cut them on the diagonal and sewed them together into blocks and sewed it together. So I would say with very little care to the edges and the corners.
Right.
It was not a masterpiece of quilting by any stretch of the imagination. And I threw batting in it and sealed it up. Like it was essentially like a quilted duvet top, except for I put batting in it, sealed it up, and put it on my bed. And I think I did some random, I sewed a border around it, like I machine quilted one square around the outside of it to hold it down or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What I'm telling you is it was not well done. It was something I did. Then a little while later, seized with a passion to hand quilt something, I was like, well, I already have a quilt. So I just stuck a hoop in the dead center of the thing and whizzed off with a little hand quilting. But no clue what I was doing in that regard either. So the very center blocks are real bad. Like when you look at them, mostly in starting. I didn't know how to start a hand quilt smoothly.
Sure. Oh.
And I think I felt I had to back tack. Or get that thing knotted on somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel... Mm-hmm. So what I'm telling you is I did not do excellence in workmanship there either.
Right.
But it ended up it's very pretty.
Yeah.
But it is I didn't finish the outside edge because that had already been damaged. So I cut off the outside edge at some point, and then it's still not bound. So what I'm doing now is actually binding that from what has to have been 25 years ago or something. I just don't want to move it one more time without it we want to just call the whole thing
complete.
Just like that bad experiment. But it's many hours of work now.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go home and launch a project that is my living room curtains, which are going to be a whole scene because I designed the fabric. I had it printed. And it's really pretty. It's on like a linen cotton blend. It's a really pretty fabric. The design on the fabric, I copied some of the wallpaper that we unearthed in the kitchen, but then changed the colorways. So I'm sort of preserving the legacy of the house in a sense on this fabric. But I changed the colorways so it's not this outrageous, violently red geranium. There's no red. Anyway, so then I spent some time re-watching the most epic tutorial.
Oh, right. You've told me about it.
I've told you about it, and I went back and I found it, and it's this woman in England who can't...
I think you've told us about this on the podcast.
I think it was right at the beginning of the podcast, because it had been a couple years, and I went back and I watched like an hour and a half of this woman trying to walk you through how to do. And I took copious notes because there is no way that you'd be able to find your place again. Because it's all the camera at the same angle looking at the same curtain.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'm ready to do it. I'm going to go home. I'm going to do it.
I'm excited.
I'm going to launch it. My goal is to have these dang things hung up by the end of the week.
We are also painting and putting new seats on chairs.
Dining
room chairs. I have my kids doing that. I have children spray painting furniture for me this summer.
Oh.
I'm like, it's time you all learned how to...
You trust them on your dining room chairs?
I have like 47 dining room chairs.
Oh, yeah. I'm still picturing drips and runs.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to picture them. I think they're actually happening. But I have the ones that we're doing right now are those caning... they have the little cane. They're like cafe chairs with the caning on the back, and we're just reorganizing those into something more. Yeah, trying to get that kind of thing done while we are in the last phases of our house.
I completed a design. We were in Atlanta last week for the whole week. Incidentally, met a lot of podcast listeners, which was super fun.
Shout out
to all of you that I said hi to in Atlanta. That was festive. But whilst I was there in my in-between times, I was working on another wallpaper for my front room. Came home with it completed, put a great big old check on my checklist of things. So I'm gradually closing in on having a semi-finished house in the front. It gets very third world toward the back. But.
So we're jumping back in here a day late. Never mind, Becca's in the middle of a text.
Hold on.
Let me just entertain you with some elevator music while she does that. Actually, we quit our podcast the other day because we felt we were being too boring. And surprisingly, it was not about napkins. We were just being boring about other subjects.
Tedious.
Yeah, we just felt like we were being not the people anyone wants to hang out with.
No, it was really bad. Like we dwindled off into talking vaguely about social media and then contradicting each other.
It was a special thing that Becca and I could do is hedge each other. Like, oh, I see where you're going, but here's my concern about that. We went back and forth quite a bit about that until we felt we had not said anything.
We kind of just trailed off and said, should we turn this off now? And
we're back in our old haunt.
That was 2 days ago. I could give you an update on my curtains, but I won't.
Right, because we started. And I found a picture of the grandma vacuum cozy.
Oh, we have to post those.
Yeah, it's a really bad one. And since that time, I Googled it up, and there's a whole world of grandma vacuum cozies, but none of them are as ill-judged as the one in the bag that I have a photo of. So, be on the edge of your seats for that.
That'll be exciting.
It'll be really good.
I bet no one will be as taken away with merriment about it as I was.
Probably not.
It was such a surprising idea.
So I have to say, something that I think is actually it's not most challenging in summer. It's just in every new phase of life, season change, every kind of like things are different now. This is like a new it's a new thing to need to deal with every time things change. And I think it's helpful because I think that this is sort of the homemaker, well, like you wrote Eve in Exile, that is all this glorious vision for what women and homemaking does and accomplishes, and what it is it for, etc. But I think all the time, the thing that we are all dealing with is how to have a lot of ambition and desire and drive without freaking out all the time. Like, it's actually very hard
or just falling into covetousness or
how to
discontent.
care, how to think that our table matters and the food I put on it matters without becoming
Total
nightmare pain. Like, without making your table a place no one wants to be. Or I think I wrote about this in Fit to Burst also, which is that you have the bizarre position of being your own boss plus the employee.
Yeah.
And so you're setting the goals and also not living up to it.
Yeah.
Which surprisingly, not surprisingly, has the it gives you the opportunity to be both a bad employee and a bad leader. Like, here's the boss who sets unrealistic expectations, and here's the employee who won't do anything because they think it's not realistic. Or here's, I don't know, I just think that there's a lot in that. So I wanted to talk, I was thinking, why don't we talk about how do you deal with that? How do you aim big and not get upset when it doesn't appear to be going big?
Well, that is the question of humanity and life. I think you've tapped into the heart of the trouble, sort of like Ecclesiastes. There you go.
But do you have any ways that you specifically deal with it? Like, how do you let things...
I feel like I know my temptation is to get the most tweaked at my house in the moments when I'm making progress on it, or whatever. You know, like, as soon as I turn and look at it and I'm actually making progress, then I sit there and can get all grumpy about the lack of progress that I'm
you
making.
tend to be an all or nothing person, which means that if you're busy with a different project, you're not bothered about your house because you're thinking, I have to do this other thing right now.
Yeah, and so I feel like it's just...
I have to say that is not a talent we share.
The all or nothing thing?
Yeah. Well,
Would
no.
we call that a talent?
I don't think I'm anywhere near, for me, it is much harder to turn off and focus on something else. That makes sense. It's much harder for me. I like to get everything cleaned up before I have to do something else. Like, if I was going to do a big event or whatever, it would stress me out infinitely more if things were not orderly at home. But that's not a gifting.
I feel exactly the same way. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I feel like I can't be fighting all the battles at once. I have to just do the one and then the other.
I think you're better at just doing the one and then the other than I am.
Oh, well,
that was my point.
I can't do multiples at the same time, but yes, I would have a very hard time coping with trying to have a big event when my house was blitzed. Like, that would be, I really have to get it, like, sorted out first and then turn to the next thing rather than trying to do them all.
Go ahead. Whoa. Jinx.
But I think that, like, one thing is just being aware of where you're tempted, being aware of where your strengths are and your weaknesses are. Like, for one thing, this goes back to our fundamental personality divide about the apple kicking to the center, but
our hottest debate.
I am not good at just back up. This summer I really am trying to work through a whole bunch of purging. And so I'm trying to tackle some of those places in the house where it's like, okay, I just need to get this thing done. My tendency would be to just set aside 4 days and just do that for 4 days. But instead, I'm trying to every day, 4 o'clock, I'm just going to go do 30 minutes of it, throw the stuff for the thrift store in a box, take it to the thrift store. That's it. Think about it again tomorrow at 4. that was my goal. I've not done it a single day this week because because I am
this week is young.
At 4, I'm like still trying to finish. Like I just need a little bit longer on this
right.
like other thing, and so I'm trying to get better at the places where I am not.
I'm not good at super scheduling, and it's something that I feel like I need to be better at. That's like a skill that I need to work on. Is that not always following your
own directions?
No, just not following your own mood at the time, but because it's not that it's not work, it's just that in an objective mental space, I might say I should do that at 4 every day, but when 4 comes around, I might be like, I'd rather work on this right now.
This is maybe a tip. I'm not sure, but maybe I've talked about this before.
Your calendar?
I don't know. The planner?
Yeah.
Have I talked about that?
I don't know. You've talked to me about it.
It's a recommend, guys. I feel like I've done it long enough now that I recommend it. It's but it's also not cheap. And I'm not a planner person in general. This is the only time I have found a planner that I'm actually using and I'm liking it, and it's helping me get way more things done. And it's the Michael Hyatt planner. And it's not cheap because you have to buy, it's 1 per quarter. So you basically have to get 4 for a year, which is, I feel like that's like $35 a piece or something.
Oh, yeah, it's a commitment.
It is a commitment. So I just got 1 and tried it for 3 months, and I really like it because it cuts with the grain of how I need to think about things.
Right.
Where you go through, and then he's got all these little videos to like tell you how to use the planner, which I watched because otherwise you don't know what you're doing. And you set your like big goals for, this is what I want to have done this year, and then you block it off into like quarters. This is what I want to have done this quarter, and then that translates to a weekly, here are my 3 big goals for the week, and then every day you write down your 3 goals for the day. And so what Ben and I have been doing it, and I really like it. So I, in the evening, just sit down and write my big 3 for tomorrow.
Right.
And then look at it again in the morning so you can remember what on earth you were hoping to get done today.
What you thought mattered.
But then at the end of the day, you go back through and you see what you got done and what you didn't get done. And then you can move stuff like, I didn't get that, I'll push it to tomorrow. And so for instance, on my today's was finish the podcast. So you see, I'll be able to
check that off.
But the thing is it has helped me find places in my day that I ordinarily would have been like, well, I don't know, I've only got 45 minutes till I need to whatever. But when I am being a little bit more focused on, this is what I'm really pushing to have this done by September 1st, and then you break it down into the weeks, and then you break it down into the days, you really do often feel like you had a packed day, but there really was space in there in between.
I would like to bring something up, which is that your kids are older, and you work also, so you have a different lifestyle most of the time.
Right.
We have different things going on. And I am only just getting out of that phase where you were just at home with little kids all the time. And it's very different, which is part of what I was talking about, the season change of like, for a long stretch of my life, being really faithful was not that predictive at all about what your day would be like. Sure. Or your big goals were like to feed people and get them in bed on time, and that was it, wash some clothes. But in that phase of life, I think the best way that I really redeemed the time while I had my little kids at home was to also have bigger goals. Mentally, I didn't write them in any planner. I just had bigger goals, like things that I want to be able to do, that I should be working towards doing. And most of those were domestic goals, because it was stuff that was still blessing everyone at home for me to do it. But this is something that I think I feel very strongly about this. Sometimes people think that we're up in our sinister spot again, and there's
Is it somebody who wants to come make a drug deal with us?
I don't know. Is he taking a pic? He's not coming to us. He's just facing out. I wonder if the drug dealer is in a tent behind the boundary there. I don't think so.
You just said, I feel strongly about this, and then we
got derailed. Okay, I feel actually really strongly about this, which is that when people say that being at home with little kids is not challenging, like mentally or
right,
and they're right that it's not challenging mentally if you set the bar at the lowest possible level.
See, that is my worst peeve. Is I think a lot of women
do that, yeah.
And they basically lower the bar flat to the floor.
And then they're like, I'm not
complain.
challenged.
Yeah.
But back to this idea that you're the boss and the employee. If you're not challenged, whose fault is that? because like if you're not mentally engaged, who didn't give you something to be mentally engaged with?
But see, okay, I actually think this does tie in with that planner. Now, not everyone needs a planner. I have most of the time not lived with a planner. But I do think that there are lots of things that it's like, well, if I was good at cooking, but I'm not. And so, well, decide to get better and make yourself a goal.
And there's a real thing.
I have figured out how to make.
And there's the thing, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be rude about this, but if you are a human, these are things that humans know how to do.
They do.
And they figure it out. And it's not, I think sometimes people have the weirdest idea that to do something like knitting or cooking, you have to have been born with just an idea of how to do it. And yeah, there is that random strangely gifted person who it's Mozart, like that.
Mozart
there is that prodigy out there. But that's not your average good cook. Is not someone who was just born a prodigy. They're someone who puts in a ton of practice and they work at it and they keep doing it.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is when my kids were little, I had a few like overarching big goals. And when I say big goals, I genuinely mean like I was thinking in terms of by the time I'm old, I want to be good at this.
Yeah.
And so where I'm squeaking in the work on it is not that I'm thinking with 15 minutes on a Monday afternoon, I'm going to become super accomplished at knitting.
Right.
My goal was over time, those 15 minutes here and there add up to a lot of knowledge.
Right. And I just think that having a direction, having a clear direction, and then aiming for it is something that would help a lot of homemakers, I think.
Oh, yes.
Because one of the things, everybody talks about how lonely and depressed and how, like basically the only sense of relief you can get when you're a mother is going out with your friends for a glass of wine.
Well, or is to like leave all of your job rather than the satisfaction of having figured something out and and being excited about it.
Right, because it's kind of like everything here is dreary, but occasionally I pop up for a glimpse of the world and a breath of air.
But where I still have no respect for the work I'm doing. Because that's the thing, is that if you think the only way to get it undreary is to get out of it, then you're not respecting the situation. And it's not true. Motherhood is hard. When you have a bunch of little kids, it's hard, but it is also so full of really fun. There's just so many opportunities and so much freedom to pursue interesting things.
Yeah, and it's like if you feel like yes, but you don't understand, it's really busy at my house and I'm just so put upon all the time.
Hold that for a second while I try to figure out if I have a hair thing in my purse.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, she found it. But the thing is like if you feel like no, I live a breathless but boring existence.
Nobody cares what I do and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, then just for the sake of argument, get yourself a little metric on how many hours did you spend on social media.
You don't need a metric, can't you? Just swipe for screen time.
But see, screen time, like, it's not quite fair because, like, I do my Bible reading on my phone and stuff like that. But
warping.
Check what amount of time you spent, and if it's an average of 4 hours a day, that's 4 hours a day that you actually could be getting really good at something, rather than
Right.
letting your jaw hang open as you
I'll
scroll.
give a couple examples that were many. So a long time ago, I'm sure I've said this on the podcast. I just was like, how many things could I be bad at now and keep being bad at them for a long time? But when I'm an old lady, I'll be really good at a lot of things. That was my dream. Because I'm like, I might not be amazing at making pie right now, but if I keep making pies until I'm an old lady, man, I'll be good at it then. Like,
sure.
There will be no arguing with my pies by that time. And I think that kind of commitment is really important. And I know to not expect yourself to just already be good at things.
Yeah.
Or to think that anyone actually learned how to be good at some of those things without effort. That's the part that's weird.
Honestly, what it takes is some imagination. But once you start trying to figure it out, like sort of like, you know what, this year I'm going to figure out how to can peaches, or I'm going to, you know, whatever it is, like just
making jam, canning peaches. I would go buy that. I like canning and preserving things. And when my kids were younger, I did actually more focused time trying to do that, or like, let's make applesauce and let's do, you know,
or
like,
sort
let's
of like,
try all
I'm
this
going to
stuff.
learn to make tortillas, and I'm going to learn to make salsa.
Do it. And I did a time where I thought that I wanted to be able to know how to just cook a piece of meat. Like, if just presented with a piece of meat, that I would know how to go about cooking it. And I remember at that time, I would, in those little random moments when you had a free minute, I would read like Fanny Farmer about assorted cuts of meat, and like, and I never did master fried chicken, but I did a fried chicken from the whole chicken, cutting the chicken up and soaking it in buttermilk. And I did it because it is an art form that some people are good at. And I thought, I want to find out.
Well, and
you know?
this is where I'm sorry to keep bringing up my curtains, but this is what I'm totally doing right now with my curtains. It's like, I've decided I don't need to spend my life making curtains, but I want to have visited this place of this is how to properly do it, which means it's all hand stitching, guys. It's 56 yards if you count the lining and the curtains. It's 56 yards of fabric, and the whole thing is hand stitched all over everywhere. The hem, the sides, the lining is hand stitched in, the whole thing. And that'll probably do me for the rest of my life, you know, for hand stitching.
On draperies.
But it's like, but I want to have experienced this is how it's done when you're doing it the proper way. And then I can say, all right, I'm done with that now. There you go. Next time, machine.
Well, okay, what you said about wanting to have visited this place. This is a thing that I believe this strongly. This was an image that I used with high school students, actually, when I was substituting for you.
I know what you're going to say, and it's very good. Yes.
As I was like, don't be such a boring human that you just stay in one place forever. And like, when you read a poem that you just think, I don't, you know, like, my point to them was, when you read, like, there was that, I think it's Richard Lovelace poem that I was talking to them about, it's a beautiful poem. It's, if I should die, think only this of me, that there is some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shows something about, in that rich earth shall be a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore and shaped and made aware. And it's a beautiful poem about, if I die away from my homeland, there will always be a piece of England there. And it's beautiful because he was killed and buried on a Greek island. So the author of that poem is buried in Greece with a beautiful tribute to his native country. I was telling them, this has nothing to do with you. You're all, you know, it's a bunch of high school students who aren't going to war, who don't know, like, they don't have those sentiments right now. And I was like, but visiting that place is putting a pin on a map that is, I understand a different part of the human experience and emotion, and like, I have traveled somewhere else to appreciate a different perspective. And I say, so the way to not be a completely boring human is to be putting pins on the map in a lot of different places. And of course, in that situation, I was talking about, you having an allergy, or are you just really weeping about that poem?
I'm not weeping. I'm having a total allergy attack over here.
But I knew that, just to be clear.
It is
I
a
knew.
poignant poem.
It is poignant, but not
it.
quite that bad. Anyways, but I'm saying in the domestic arts and in these places, it is an enormous country. It is not.
Yep.
It is not provincial. It is not tiny and homey. You know, like one of the things that I love is in knitting and in fiber arts, I have a real affection for natural fibers that I just, for whatever reason, I do. Well, is that actually something that is super provincial, or is it something that taps into a whole world of human experience, which it does? Like, so you think how homey knitting is, but also how radically world travel-y it can be when you're saying, well, I want to knit something in this Estonian style of this, and it is a really cool thing. And pursuing some of those things. I remember
back when I was in maybe high school or college, there was a friend who visited from a very large city. And we do not live in a large city. And so when somebody comes from elsewhere, we have to find things to show them that are, well, we major on mountains, you know.
Provincial.
Water, bodies of water. Mm-hmm. And so we went on a hike, and there's this spot that is unreal here, where it's a short drive away, and then you go on this hike, and when you come to the top, you can see for like hundreds of miles, right, in every direction, the most beautiful rolling farmland.
Steptoe?
Kamiak.
Okay, yeah.
You know, just gorgeous. And it is truly a stunning view. And I remember she went up like 3/4 of the way, maybe, and then refused to go any further. She's like, no, I'm just going to stay here. I'll wait till you get back. And we were like, what?
You have to go to the top or you won't.
And it's not like it's a hard hike. She just got bored and sat down. It was like, I'm not interested.
Not worth it.
And so
whatever
she just
it is
there.
At the top of the hill.
And the rest of us who've already seen it a lot of times were like, well, we're not going to quit here. So we went up and looked at it. It's like breathtaking. And then we came back down, but she wouldn't go any farther. It was before phones, so she didn't even have a phone to play on. She just sat there.
Being a dud.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where a lot of people decide to live. Is like, I'm just going to sit here, guys.
And I'm not going to
I'm not going to be interested. I'm not going to make an effort. I'm not going to...
And I'm not going to recognize that before you can do something really great in any of these fields, you have to put in all the small steps that get you up to the lookout. Because it's not fascinating when you first put in a lot of effort and grease bomb your whole kitchen trying to make a fried chicken, and it's not amazing.
And it's soggy.
Not. Yeah, there's not. It's not like you're gonna just be like, "Wow, worth my time."
But the thing is, troubleshoot
it, and believe that there actually is success in this field
and
that will require additional steps towards
it. And then,
it.
Figure out. Does your family like big, thick pancakes, or do they like the thin pancakes?
And how can you make them
that
way?
What makes the difference?
And I did, at the time, I did that with the large cuts of meat. I did it with knitting, where I got more into knitting, but what I tried to do there is have I would try to have a project that I would pick because it had something I didn't know how to do in it. Yeah. So I would say, okay, I remember specifically knitting a stuffed penguin for Seamus because I was like, I don't know how to do short rows, and the belly was shaped with short rows at that time. I'm like, okay, I'll try this. So I did that, but I didn't need a stuffed penguin, so I gave it to Seamus because it was like, well, I did that, but now what?
Well, it's kind of like this curtain drama that I'm having. It was like, this lady says, now you're going to do a fell stitch all the way up the edge.
Like, well.
I'm like, okay. So I Google the fell stitch, and I watch the tutorial, and I figure out how to do the fell stitch, and then I do that. And then it's like, and blind hem the bottom. So it's like, okay. So I Google it up just to make sure that I know what I'm doing. The lock stitch to lock your two seams together. And so there are resources out there.
Yes, and they're so easy to find, but you have to be willing to work to figure it out. You have to walk up the hill. You have to do it.
Exactly.
And I think I went through a little phase with Cooks Illustrated about different ways to thicken pie fillings. And there's a
I'm
lot.
on tapioca right now. Tapioca in a strawberry rhubarb pie.
Right, but I watch them. Okay,
really
no, the best one in strawberry rhubarb is arrowroot.
I don't like arrowroot.
Oh, it's awesome in strawberry rhubarb. It keeps the juice. It makes it clear, like really shiny and clear, and it is effective. So I like arrowroot and strawberry rhubarb. But the peach they recommend, like potato starch or something. They have
weird.
like totally different, like and it's not that you have to care that much about it. It's that you know that this is actually a huge and nuanced and interesting world where these things are.
And God gave us various thickeners.
And not just various thickeners, various people to pursue figuring out all kinds of stuff for
while
us.
we're on this subject, Rachel, the camas is blooming everywhere right now, you guys. The camas is like, it's actually growing out of the sidewalk cracks that we're looking at right now. And it's this brief moment where there's tons of it everywhere. And I have often thought, why did none of us do anything with camas? It's because it tastes gross, but I wish there was...
Camas root.
Camas root. Have you ever tasted it? It's not good. It tastes like an old piece of like tobacco pouch.
Yeah, well, this camas, the wild camas, is why our area was first called Hog Heaven. Because hogs like it.
And I'm like, but
they're very pretty.
Every year, and I've been thinking it while we sit here, it's like, it's a shame that we don't do anything with that.
Have something to do with camas.
Anyway, that was a tangent. I'm just thinking,
and I was also going to say that now I have a huge loom, and I have stepped into the world of weaving that is, let me just tell you, it's a little deep.
Yeah,
the world of weaving.
Deep and wide.
But it has been a solid 15 years, more than 15 years, that I have been warming up to step into the world of weaving because I could tell it was too deep for me.
Yeah.
But I kept sort of occasionally checking some things out, looking about it, thinking about it, and then eventually when I got there, now it does not feel too deep for me, but for a long time it made me feel like I was going to be sick, sort of like the beading aisle at Michael's still does for me. I feel like I see how this could be good, but I can't think about it.
Live in a plain, boring house, and you just think, but I just don't know how to decorate. It's just not what I'm good at. It's like, subscribe to some magazines. Start forming
thinking.
Some opinions.
And ask yourself questions. Like, do I like this? Why do I like this? What appeals to me about this? How could I
think that's a really big part of it, is the self-awareness of like, I hate that. I wonder why I hate that. What is it about this that I hate?
It's a mental conversation more to actually pursue the thought of what is not appealing about this.
And then the fact that I find that repulsive means this about me. I think that I prefer whatever. Start forming opinions. Start figuring out what you think about stuff and what you like, and then figure out how to make it happen. Because maybe you have tons of money and you can just hire a decorator and get them to do it. But
maybe you can't.
Maybe you cannot, and you need to figure it out yourself and get good at painting furniture, or figure out upholstery, or learn to make curtains, or learn to paint walls yourself, or learn to paint paintings.
Also,
to put
sourdough.
On your walls.
Also, sourdough was a thing that took me a long time to try. I didn't think I wanted sourdough, so that was a big part of it. But once I was interested, it seemed like having a pet that I wasn't ready for the responsibility of the sourdough pet.
I'm still in that world right now.
Right, but it just is a good idea to not write things off all the way, but to be like, maybe not now, but maybe sometime I'll get into that. Or
no, I just think be curious. I think that's the biggest thing, is be curious and then figure out how to implement stuff in your own life, because I think there's time and there are resources. And so it feels like an able-bodied person sitting by the side of the path refusing to go up is kind of embarrassing.
Because they're actually just not interested in what there might be there, because it might take a little bit of energy and effort to get them there. and they don't know yet. Like, and actually I would say there's no shame in trying a craft or something, learning how to do it, and then coming to the conclusion that this is not for you, or this is not the one that you want to do.
No.
And
or
being like,
there's also no shame in being like, I'm not interested in trying that craft because I have a big long list of other things I'm going to get to
right,
first.
but if you're just not interested because you're just not interested in life or in the value that any of these things bring. And one thing, I'm sure I've talked about this before, but I think it's really, I love it. So a hand knit pair of socks is not worth a lot. When you think about it, it's a pair of socks.
Yeah.
So the most people really usually would want to pay for a pair of socks would be like, what, $25? I would say.
That's on an extreme end.
I know, but I'm saying like the kind of socks you might buy someone for a Christmas gift, like the nice wool socks, $20, $25, somewhere in there. That's also how much you would pay for a nice skein of sock yarn.
Sure.
Like, it's the same, but it's not even knit yet.
Right.
So then if you knit it into a pair of socks, and how many hours
like
of labor was that?
69 hours later. Yeah.
Probably not that many, but quite a lot of hours would go into it. Like, I would guess, I don't know, 10 hours?
I don't think so. I think you're going to have to spend more time than that.
Some people are fast. Whatever. But let's say that you do that. So what have you done here? You have produced something that is not even sort of worth its own, like, what would it need? Like, to make it monetarily worth your time.
Right.
You would have to sell this pair of socks for like, what, $150? Something like that.
I would think at a bare minimum.
I hope that you all notice how untenable that is as a business plan. Why would anyone want to pay $150 for a pair of socks?
Right.
Very few people do. But knitting a pair of socks and giving them to someone, you have given them, it's not the money value, it's the fact that this is something you can only have if someone loves you.
Right.
Like, someone who knits loves you enough to do this for you, and the whole value is not money. It's not the money that's going into that. And I love that kind of thing, but it's so true about things like, where can you get the best peach pie ever? Chances are very good that it is somebody
at Sherry's.
No, somebody loves you. Like, your grandmother loves you, and she loved you enough to learn how to make an incredible peach pie and to make it for you. Or where can you get the best apple strudel? Hopefully you know someone who loves you, who has taken the time to do this. And when you realize that way, that when you take the time to develop your own skills that will bless other people around you in one way or another, that you're investing love in those people in something that they could not get another way.
And I think that goes back to your initial question, which is like, how do you aim balance but not get frustrated? I think it's by enjoying the process and loving the people as you do it. And doing it for the love of the people, which means that you don't sacrifice them on the altar of, I'm angry because I didn't do a good job at this. Sure. Or like, I made homemade, pasta for everyone, and now I'm mad that you ate it because didn't you see how much time I put into that?
That was a formative life lesson for me when I made a bunch of handmade raviolis.
We did that last week.
Oh, nice. Well, then
everyone gets 2.5 raviolis.
Then we sat down. And I'm watching people stabbing multiple raviolis onto their fork at one time. And you're going, stop it! What are you thinking? Like, each bite of this ravioli must be a treasure.
Oh my word, I know.
Loiter over every bit of it and not do this. Whatever you're doing now, I hate it. What you're doing,
but the thing is that I think having
that's kind of
aspirations.
I would say the principle there is the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. You gotta take it be like when you make food for someone, the food was made for them and not them for the food.
Right. Yeah, I agree, and I just think that it's a kind of having the high aspirations, but not thinking that you'll get there and then you can rest on your laurels and get all the accolades. It's just enjoying the bumpy, ridiculous, sometimes glorious, sometimes absurd process that is life.
It's embracing that. Yeah, and I have to say that this is an awesome thing about we happen to live in community with a lot of capable, committed, diligent homemakers.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible blessing that we have that. So we have an interesting perspective on that. One of the things that I find incredibly fun is that when all these ladies are free and open-handed with what they have learned and wanting to help other people learn it. So if someone's like, oh my goodness, I love this, people share the recipes. They share, like, come over and I'll show you how to do it, or it's really easy. This is how I got started. Let me recommend this. I'll send you it, whatever. And that is an amazing way that in community it keeps raising the bar.
Yep.
Because in community it is peer pressure of a really good kind. It's not pressure like, oh, everybody has to be able to do this thing or that thing.
No, it's just camaraderie.
It's camaraderie and encouragement to be like, not only is this doable, but I have a desire to do it.
But I think it's because women do, they get inspiration from each other all the time. And if you
it's like how we actually function.
Yeah, and if you don't live in a community like that, become that woman yourself. And the thing is we live in a day and age where you can find that inspiration online. You don't have to have it be your next door neighbor.
Maybe we've just inspired you today to start an intense drapery project of your own.
And speaking of which, I need to get back and hand stitch some
more. Becca's got more miles of hand stitchery to go.
Yeah, it's gonna be rad.
You know what I bought at the thrift store the other day? A really nice
vacuum cozy
quilting hoop.
Oh,
that's on a stand.
Oh, you did. Oh, well done.
Yeah, I thought that was bold of me. Boldly, I go forth into assuming I'm going to be hand quilting something again. But it was a really good deal on one that's like, it was like brand new with all this stuff. And it's like a $200 quilting hoop on a stand. Well, and I felt like, well, yeah, I should buy that because I'm going to need that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what I did? This is for my too long of curtains. They're 10-foot ceilings and they're going floor to ceiling. So it's too long to have the piece on my table, and then it's a double panel that is 52 inches wide, so it's way wide. So I got some folding tables and strung them together end to end so that I can lay out the whole length on it. But mark this piece of genius, I put them on bed risers because I had a bunch of extra bed risers.
That is a good idea.
I know. So it's actually at a height.
Only works if you had bed risers.
I did, though. I had them in the basement. And so
it's a work table height.
It's a work table height, which is very handy. And so then I can shove this thing, like spread it all the way out. I can't spread it all the way out. It's
I'm so glad Becca's practicing this now so that when I move into my house with 84 windows, I'll call you.
I'll be like,
and guys,
Rachel,
she's totally going to jump at that opportunity.
I'm going to be like, buy some Walmart flat sheets.
Rachel, I don't care about your problems, is what she's going to say. Do you remember when I was so into intense drapery? I'm not that into it anymore. All right,
they're curtains you can only have if someone loves you.
We went side. Yes, amen.
I like that in the second half we didn't talk about what we said we would talk about in the second half.
What did we say we would talk about?
Someone asked about date night with your husband.
Date night.
And we didn't even address it. Next time, maybe, guys, we'll talk about
All right. Until next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You think of yourself now, and then in 4 years' time, what do you want yourself to look like? And is the education that you're considering going to help you get to that place?
When you're a student, you want to become like your teacher. You're going to become like your teacher. Looking at NSA beforehand, I knew I wanted to become like the men who are teaching here.
Fireman, husband, father, doctor, no matter where you want to go, NSA is just such good preparation for the person that you want to be.
If you want to be an effective Christian, you need to be able to lead and shape culture. If you want to do that, no matter what your occupation is, You need to shape yourself, prepare yourself as a person for that job. And liberal arts is, I think, the best education you can have for that.
To learn more, check us out online at nsa.edu.